On the morning of my birthday, I woke up believing I was loved. That's the cruelest part of the memory, not the betrayal itself, but how safe I felt before it happened. My name is Claire Anderson, and for years I believed my life was finally settling into something stable, something earned. I was engaged to the man everyone said was perfect for me. I had a family that smiled for photos and pretended nothing was wrong. And that morning, I woke up expecting nothing more dramatic than flowers, cake, and maybe an engagement anniversary joke from my fiancé. Instead, I found them in bed together. Before I tell you how everything fell apart, and how I made sure it didn't end quietly, tell me where you're watching from. Leave it in the comments. Because if you've ever been betrayed by the two people who were supposed to protect you the most, you'll understand why silence stopped being an option for me that day. It was my birthday. 29. I remember noticing small details first. The house felt too quiet. No coffee smell. No music playing from the kitchen like he always did on special days. My phone had no new messages, which I brushed off as him planning a surprise. I walked down the hallway barefoot, still half asleep, wearing the oversized shirt he used to tease me about. I remember smiling to myself, thinking about how ridiculous it was that after 5 years together, he still managed to make me feel chosen. That smile didn't survive the bedroom door. It was slightly open. I heard laughter first. Soft, familiar, careless. My sister's laugh. My younger sister, Emily. For a split second, my brain tried to protect me. It offered excuses faster than I could process reality. Maybe she stayed over. Maybe they were talking. Maybe I was mishearing. But when I pushed the door open, there was nothing left to misunderstand. They weren't talking. They weren't dressed. They didn't even look surprised. My fiancé froze like a child caught stealing. My sister screamed my name, pulling the sheets up as if modesty could erase what was already burned into my memory. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I just stood there, perfectly still, watching the two people who knew me better than anyone else scramble to explain the unexplainable. "Claire," he started. I raised my hand. "Don't," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. That scared me more than anything else. Emily's face was pale, her eyes wide with the kind of panic that only appears when consequences finally arrive. She kept repeating my name like it might soften the moment. "It's not what it looks like," she said. I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it was insulting. I turned around and walked out. I didn't grab my phone. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't slam the door. I walked into the kitchen, sat down at the table, and stared at the small birthday card my fiancé had left out the night before. It was still sealed. I remember thinking how strange it was that betrayal didn't feel loud. It felt hollow, like something essential had been removed without warning. Minutes passed, maybe more. Time stopped behaving normally. Eventually, they came out of the bedroom. He tried to talk. Emily tried to cry. They both tried to explain their way out of the truth. I didn't let them. "I'm leaving," I said, "but don't mistake this for forgiveness." They both looked relieved. That was their second mistake. I left the house that morning with nothing but my car keys and a clarity I had never felt before. I drove until the city thinned into quiet streets and parked near the river, sitting in silence as the shock finally settled. And that's when something inside me changed. Not into rage, not into chaos, into resolve. Because what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was how much of their lives I had quietly been holding together. I wasn't just the fiancé who planned dinners and remembered birthdays. I was the one who managed the finances, the one whose credit covered emergencies, the one whose name was on contracts, accounts, and legal documents they barely read before signing. I had spent years being useful instead of visible. And that morning, on my birthday, I decided I was done being either. I didn't confront them again that day. I didn't post online. I didn't call my parents. I did something far more dangerous. I started preparing, because betrayal like that doesn't deserve a scene. It deserves consequences. And I was about to make sure they felt every single one. I didn't go to my parents' house that day. I didn't call my friends. I didn't even cry. Instead, I checked into a small hotel across town under my own name and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall until my phone finally started buzzing. Missed calls, text messages, apologies stacked on top of excuses. From him first. I can explain. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Please don't do this. Then from Emily, I swear it just happened. I was lonely. I didn't think you'd find out. That one almost made me laugh. Of course she hadn't thought about me finding out. She never thought about me at all. Growing up, Emily had always been the fragile one. The baby. The one everyone protected before she even asked. When she failed a class, my parents blamed the teacher. When she quit jobs, they blamed bad management. When she broke rules, they said she was finding herself. And when she wanted something that belonged to me, they told me to be the bigger person. I had spent my entire life being the reasonable sister, the dependable daughter, the woman who didn't make scenes, didn't demand attention, didn't need reassurance, which is exactly why no one noticed how much power I actually held. That night in the hotel room, I opened my laptop and logged into the account I managed quietly for years, the one my fiancé trusted because numbers stressed him out. Our joint savings, the mortgage payment schedule, the insurance policies, the credit card accounts he used without asking questions. My name was everywhere. His wasn't. I stared at the screen and felt something settle into place. Not anger, precision. I didn't drain accounts. I didn't freeze cards yet. I didn't send threats. I documented everything. Screenshots, statements, dates, authorizations. Because revenge isn't loud when it's done right. It's clean. The next morning, my birthday morning, technically, my mother called. "Claire," she said carefully, like she was stepping onto thin ice. "Emily told us something upsetting." I stayed quiet. "She said you walked in on something you misunderstood." I closed my eyes. "Did she also tell you she was sleeping with my fiancé?" I asked calmly. Silence, then a sigh. Not shock, not outrage, just exhaustion. "Well," my mother said slowly, "relationships are complicated." That was the moment I knew something had shifted permanently. Not because my fiancé betrayed me, but because my own mother had already decided who she was going to protect. "She's your sister," my mother continued. "We don't want this to tear the family apart." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "It already did," I said. "You just didn't feel it yet." She hung up shortly after, frustrated that I wasn't reacting the way she expected. No screaming, no begging, no collapse. I let the silence stretch. By afternoon, my fiancé showed up at the hotel. I watched him through the peephole before opening the door. His hair was messy, his eyes red. He was holding a small gift bag, something he must have grabbed in panic. "Please," he said as soon as I opened the door. "Just let me talk." I stepped aside. He launched into apologies so rehearsed they felt almost professional. He blamed stress, loneliness, alcohol, confusion. Then he said the one thing that ended any possibility of mercy. "She didn't mean anything," he said. "You're the one I want to marry." I stared at him. "She's my sister," I replied. He flinched. I know. And that makes it worse. But it's not like I love her." That was when I realized something important. He didn't understand betrayal. He thought cheating was the problem. It wasn't. The problem was entitlement. "You should leave," I said quietly. He looked relieved. I let him walk out, thinking he still had a chance. That night, I made my first move. I removed my name from the wedding vendor contracts, every single one, because technically, the wedding wasn't canceled yet. It was just no longer paid for. Then I froze the joint credit cards. Not permanently, just temporarily. Enough to cause inconvenience. Enough to raise questions. The next morning, my phone exploded. He couldn't pay for gas. Emily couldn't order food. My mother suddenly needed clarification. I answered none of them. Instead, I booked a consultation with a lawyer. Because emotions
Paperwork
fade.
doesn't.
And while they were scrambling to understand why the world suddenly felt unstable, I was quietly making sure that instability had a direction, toward accountability. By the time they realized I wasn't coming back, it was already too late, because betrayal doesn't destroy you when you see it clearly. It sharpens you. And I was just getting started. By the third day, the story had stopped being private. Emily posted first, a long paragraph on social media about mistakes, mental health, and being attacked by jealousy. She didn't use my name, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew who she meant. She ended it with, "Please respect my privacy during this difficult time." Privacy. After sleeping with the man I was supposed to marry, after blowing up my birthday, after smiling at me across dinner tables for months while knowing exactly what she was doing. People commented with
sympathy,
hearts, with "stay strong." My phone buzzed constantly with messages asking if it was true. I didn't respond. I didn't need to defend myself publicly. I didn't need to explain. Because I had learned something crucial over the years. People who rush to tell their side first are usually trying to control the damage, not tell the truth. Later that evening, my father called. He never calls unless something is truly wrong. "Claire," he said quietly, "your mother is upset. This has gotten out of hand." I leaned back against the hotel headboard. "Out of hand for who?" I asked. He hesitated. "For everyone." That told me everything. Not for me. Not for what I lost. Not for what was done to me. For the inconvenience it caused. "They want you to come over," he added. "We should talk like adults." I almost laughed. Adults don't sleep with their siblings' fiancé. Adults don't ask the betrayed person to fix the mess quietly. But I agreed to meet them. Not because I owed them anything, because I wanted them to look me in the eye. When I walked into my parents' living room, Emily was already there, sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes red, posture fragile. The performance was flawless. She stood up immediately. "Claire, I'm so sorry," she said, voice shaking. "I never wanted to hurt you." I looked at her for a long moment. "You didn't want to hurt me," I repeated. "You just didn't care if you did." My mother jumped in instantly. "That's not fair," she snapped. "Emily is already devastated." I turned to her. "So am I said calmly. "But only one of us did something wrong." My fiancé, ex-fiancé now, sat in the corner, silent, ashamed, smaller than I remembered him. Good. Emily started crying harder. "It just happened," she sobbed. "We were both stressed. You were always busy, always working." There it was. The justification. I straightened. "I was working to pay for your dinners," I said. "Your vacations, your emergencies. I was busy building a future that you both felt entitled to steal." My father rubbed his temples. "Enough," he murmured. "This isn't helping." "No," I said. What didn't help was ignoring this family's patterns for decades. They stared at me. "You raised one daughter to be forgiven," I continued. and another to be used. And now you're shocked that the one you used finally stopped cooperating." Silence fell heavy in the room. Emily looked up at me, eyes red but calculating. "So what now?" she asked quietly. "You ruin my relationship? You cancel the wedding? You embarrass us online?" I smiled faintly. "No," I said. "I let consequences do their job." I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. Bank statements, contracts, account histories. My mother's eyes widened. "What is this?" "Proof," I said, "that the wedding was mine, that the savings were mine, that the life you were enjoying depended on me." My ex-fiancé swallowed hard. "You said you handled the finances," he muttered, staring at the pages. "I didn't know it was all you." "Of course you didn't," I replied. "You didn't ask." Emily stood abruptly. "So this is blackmail," she snapped. "You think you can scare us?" "No," I said calmly. "This is closure." I turned to my parents. "I've closed the accounts, removed my name from everything. The wedding is canceled. The lease is ending. The support is over." My mother's face hardened. "You're being cruel." I met her gaze steadily. "No," I said. "I'm being done." Emily's voice rose. "You're destroying this family." I laughed then, a soft, exhausted sound. "You're confusing destruction with exposure." My father finally spoke. "We made mistakes," he said quietly. "But can't we fix this?" I shook my head. "You fix things before they break," I said. "Not after you benefit from the damage." I turned to my ex-fiancé. "You're free to be with her," I said. "But you'll do it without my money, my credit, or my silence." His shoulders sagged. "I lost you," he whispered. "Yes," I said, "you did." And for the first time, it felt final. I walked out without waiting for permission, without apologies, without looking back. The fallout was swift. The wedding was officially canceled within a week. Vendors refunded deposits. To me, friends chose sides quietly. Some stopped calling. Others apologized for not seeing it sooner. Emily moved back in with my parents. My ex-fiancé tried to rebuild his life without my financial scaffolding. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest. Weeks later, my mother sent me a message. "I hope you're happy." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back the truth. "I'm finally at peace." And I was. Not because I won, but because I stopped losing. Betrayal didn't ruin me. It taught me something priceless. Loyalty without boundaries is self-destruction. And silence only protects people who benefit from it. On my next birthday, I didn't celebrate quietly. I booked a trip. I toasted myself. I laughed with people who knew my worth without needing proof. And for the first time in my life, my happiness didn't depend on being chosen. It depended on choosing myself. The last message I ever received from my ex-fiancé came a week later. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even anger. It was short, empty. "I didn't think you'd actually do it." I stared at the screen for a long moment before placing my phone face down on the table. That sentence said everything. He hadn't been sorry. He hadn't been remorseful. He had just assumed I would stay quiet, assumed I would protect them, assumed I would swallow the betrayal the way I had swallowed so many things before. That assumption cost them everything. My younger sister tried next. She didn't call. She didn't text. She showed up. I was coming back from work when I saw her sitting on the steps outside my apartment, knees pulled to her chest, mascara smudged, hair messy like she wanted to look small again, like she wanted to be forgiven without saying the word. I didn't invite her inside. "What do you want?" I asked calmly. She looked up, eyes red. "You didn't have to ruin our lives." I almost laughed. You ruined them the moment you climbed into his bed, I said. I just stopped lying for you. She stood up quickly, voice rising. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything, I replied. It meant you chose yourself over me, over family. Her voice cracked. He said you wouldn't care. He said you were strong. I felt something cold settle in my chest. That's what people say when they think strength means silence, I said. It doesn't. She reached for my arm, desperate now. Please, we can fix this. I stepped back. No, I said softly. You can live with it. She left crying. I didn't follow. I didn't comfort her. I didn't explain myself. For the first time in my life, I let people sit with the consequences of their choices without cushioning the fall. The wedding never happened. The engagement was quietly dissolved. The story they told people changed every time it was repeated, but the truth stayed exactly where I put it. Documented, witnessed, undeniable. Friends reached out. Some apologized for not seeing it sooner. Others admitted they had suspected but didn't want to get involved. I forgave none of them out loud, but I stopped needing their validation. On my next birthday, I did something I had never done before. I celebrated myself. No apologies. No compromises. No people who needed me smaller so they could feel bigger. Just peace. I realized something important in the quiet that followed. Revenge doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like clarity. Sometimes it looks like walking away with your dignity intact, while the people who hurt you scramble to explain why they deserve forgiveness they never earned. They thought I would collapse. They thought I would beg. They thought I would forgive just to keep the peace. Instead, I chose myself. And that choice changed everything. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you, if you've ever been told to be quiet, to be strong, to let it go, if you've ever carried someone else's shame so they wouldn't have to, let me tell you this. Walking away isn't weakness. It's the moment you finally stop paying the price for someone else's betrayal. And once you do, they never get that power back.